Fang went to the hospital because of a cough, a persistent, unremarkable cough that had lasted a few weeks. His doctor ordered a routine chest CT scan. The scan came back normal. He went home. 2 days later, the hospital called. An artificial intelligence system had reviewed his scan after his doctor signed off on it, scanning not just his lungs but every organ visible in the image, and had detected a suspicious shadow on his pancreas, an organ nobody had been looking at. Fang almost did not pick up the phone. He assumed it was a scam. It was not a scam. Surgery confirmed what the AI had found. A pancreatic tumor, early stage, still operable. His surgeon, Dr. Shen Yiyu, said the AI had saved his life. Pancreatic cancer caught at an early stage has a survival rate above 20%. Caught late, as it almost always is, the 5-year survival rate drops below 12%. Fang's cough had nothing to do with his pancreas. His doctor's eyes had seen nothing wrong. The AI found a tumor in an organ no one was examining, in a scan ordered for a completely different reason, before Fang had a single symptom that pointed to cancer. This happened in Jiaxing, China, in early 2025, and it was not a one-time event. Every year, millions of people die from diseases that were already present in their bodies months or years before any symptom appeared. Heart disease, cancer, stroke. The diseases that kill the most people on Earth share one devastating characteristic. By the time you feel something wrong, the disease has already been developing silently for years, sometimes decades. The entire model of modern Western medicine is built around a fundamental limitation. Doctors diagnose what they can observe. They measure blood pressure, order tests based on symptoms, review scans with human eyes trained to find what they are looking for. The problem is that the human body begins failing long before it announces the failure. The molecular changes that precede a heart attack begin years before the arteries show visible damage. The cellular mutations that become cancer accumulate silently for a decade before a tumor is large enough to detect. The neurological deterioration that leads to Alzheimer's begins in the brain 20 years before memory loss appears. Medicine has known this for a long time. The question was always the same. How do you find something that has not yet declared itself? China decided that the answer was not better doctors. It was a different kind of intelligence entirely. In January 2025, China's national health system began a quiet expansion that most of the world did not notice. AI diagnostic systems developed by Chinese technology companies and research institutions were deployed not just in the major hospitals of Beijing and Shanghai, but in county-level clinics across the country, including rural facilities that had previously struggled to attract experienced radiologists. The system deployed in Fang's hospital in Jiaxing was one of hundreds operating across China by that point. These systems do not replace doctors. They work in parallel, reviewing every scan, every image, every data point, looking for patterns that fall outside normal parameters, flagging anomalies that human eyes might miss, or that fall outside the scope of what was originally being examined. The AI does not get tired. It does not get distracted. It does not limit its search to the organ the doctor ordered a scan for. It looks at everything in the image and compares what it finds against patterns drawn from millions of prior cases. In the first large-scale deployment studies conducted across Chinese hospitals, AI systems identified clinically significant findings that the reviewing radiologist had not flagged in a meaningful percentage of cases. Not rare edge cases. A consistent pattern of supplementary detection that, across millions of scans, translates into hundreds of thousands of additional diagnoses per year. But detection from existing symptoms, even earlier detection, is still reactive medicine. China was already moving past it. In July 2026, a research team at the University of Hong Kong published findings in Nature Communications that represented something fundamentally different. Not an AI that finds disease better than a doctor. An AI that finds disease before any doctor could, because it finds disease before the body shows any sign of it at all. The system is called cardiomic score. It works from a single blood test, not a specialized test requiring rare equipment or months of processing, a standard blood draw. The AI then analyzes 2,920 different proteins, and 168 metabolites circulating in that blood sample, molecular signals that reflect what is happening inside the body at the cellular level right now. Changes invisible to any conventional diagnostic tool, patterns that the human eye cannot interpret, and that no existing clinical blood panel was designed to detect. From those signals, CardioMix score generates a personalized risk score for 6 major cardiovascular diseases simultaneously: coronary artery disease, stroke, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, peripheral artery disease, venous thromboembolism, 6 of the conditions that together account for the largest share of deaths on the planet. And the warning it generates arrives not months before onset, not 1 or 2 years. In high-risk individuals, the system detected warning signals up to 15 years before clinical disease appeared. To understand what 15 years means in practical terms, consider what medicine currently offers. The standard cardiovascular risk assessment used in clinics across the United States and Europe measures blood pressure, cholesterol, body weight, smoking history, and family history. It is a blunt instrument, unchanged in its fundamental approach for decades, that catches risk factors already visible to standard measurement. A patient whose cholesterol is elevated can be told they are at higher risk. A patient who smokes can be told the same. But those assessments cannot detect the molecular processes unfolding years before any conventional risk factor becomes measurable. The proteins and metabolites that CardioMix score reads are dynamic. They change as the body changes. They reflect the real-time biological state of the cardiovascular system, capturing deterioration that begins long before blood pressure rises or cholesterol crosses a clinical threshold. Professor Zhang Qingpeng, who led the research team at HKUM, explained the distinction directly. Genes determine where we start, he said. They define our baseline health risk. The proteins and metabolites tell us where we are right now, how the body is actually performing at this moment, how it is responding to everything happening inside and around it. That real-time biological portrait, analyzed by an AI trained on data from thousands of participants and nearly 3,000 molecular markers, produces a warning system that no doctor with a stethoscope and a cholesterol panel can replicate. The study was built on data from the UK Biobank, one of the largest long-term health research databases in the world, tracking hundreds of thousands of participants over years with comprehensive biological measurements. The AI was trained on this data, learning to identify the molecular patterns that preceded cardiovascular disease by years or decades, then validated against participants whose outcomes were already known. The results were published in Nature Communications, the same journal family that published the brain-spine interface research that allowed paralyzed patients in China to walk again. The research was funded in part by the National Natural Science Foundation of China. The team was Chinese. The institution was Chinese. The AI was built in China. And the warning it can generate, 15 years before a heart attack, 15 years before a stroke, exists today only because Chinese researchers decided that waiting for symptoms was no longer an acceptable standard of care. What American medicine currently offers a 45-year-old patient with no obvious symptoms is a physical exam and standard blood panel. If the numbers look acceptable, the doctor sends the patient home. That patient might be 10 years into a cardiovascular disease process that will kill them at 58. Under the current system, they will not know until the first symptom appears, which in the case of heart attack is sometimes the heart attack itself. CardioMix score is not yet available in American clinics. It is not FDA approved. It is not covered by insurance. The regulatory process that would bring it to American patients has not begun. What exists is the published research, the validated AI, the peer-reviewed evidence in Nature Communications, and the clinical deployment pathway already being developed in China, where the system was built, and where the health system that funded it is already planning how to integrate it into population-level screening. The gap between what Chinese medicine can now offer and what an American walking into their doctor's office can access is not a gap in knowledge. The knowledge exists. The gap is in speed, in regulatory architecture. and in the fundamental question of how quickly a healthcare system is willing to act on evidence that its current standard of care is leaving people to die from diseases that were already detectable years earlier. China deployed AI diagnostics in rural county clinics before most American hospitals had integrated basic AI tools into their radiology workflow. China published the first validated AI system capable of predicting cardiovascular disease 15 years in advance from a single blood test, 2 days before this video was written. China is not waiting for Western medicine to confirm what its researchers have already proven. It is building the infrastructure, training the systems, deploying the tools, and treating the patients. Fang is alive because an AI in a Chinese hospital looked at a scan his doctor had already cleared and found something no one was looking for. The question is not whether this technology works. The published data says it works. The question is when it will reach the people who need it, and who will be the ones still waiting when it finally does.